Hi everyone, this is Menz here. I'm going to be playing the 113 here on Karelia. This match, it's a Mastery Badge First Class. It ends up being pretty interesting and it gets fairly close towards the end. Um, there's a T95 on enemy team and a couple of nasty TDs, and they end up being a little bit of a challenge for us. But I do get a steel wall in this match. I end up with 4,137 damage and 5,440 damage blocked, with a little bit of assist damage sprinkled in. I did use a bit of heat rounds too, but it ends up being worth it. So starting out here, here's no SPGs, quite a few TDs. Now the TDs, I kind of expect it to go down into the south here, set up on this little ledge like they usually do, or corner, I guess I could say. It's virtually impossible to get around them head on. It's a losing battle. You're better off waiting and trying to flank from behind rather than smash your face into them. So knowing that, I'm going to decide to go north. The 113 doesn't have the best gun depression, and it also doesn't have a turret situated close to the front of the tank like the WZ-111-14 does. So it isn't the best location for this to go, but I do have a fairly good upper glacis, so I am situated higher than if I find tanks here when I'm up there. But tanks back in the base do have a chance to penetrate me. At this point, the AMX 30B and the 121 kind of point out, hey, we're low, we're low in the south. And they're both being, Debbie Downers, for lack of words. And, the 30B is out there. And, at this point, I'm kind of saying to myself, like why complain? Like, just don't push down there. Like, if we don't have people down there, there's no point, it's destined to lose, like I said there. So why push down there and kind of throw your tanks away, especially as I point out there's no arty. That's the reason I chose up here, is even though we do get a few TDs setting up over here, which surprised me, but with the high chance of high alpha armored TDs, and beefy tanks being right in front of you down there, unless you have the advantage and you pin them back early without SPGs, and it's very hard to get shots off from back here without being seen and actually damaging people usefully here, there's no point in smashing your head against a brick wall. You're gonna die. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So fortunately, enough of our team, like we have a couple people in the center, these people in the base, granted they're not that useful until they push up. We have enough people in the north to make a push. It's the smart play to do. Like, there's no arty to help us. However, you have a better chance to win up here, and that's probably why the enemy kind of goes with the same plan. I missed this shot. The gun on this thing, honestly, it's really fickle to use. A lot of times it works great. Oftentimes you're going to miss everything, or your penetration on the AP 149, which isn't bad for a tier 10, but some of the newer tier 10s, they have more accurate guns, more penetration, and it can definitely play a little bit of tricks on you. But you do have a lot of HP in this, 2300, very good mobility. It's basically like a giant medium tank. You just lack a little bit of gun depression. But at this point, our AMX 1390 dies over there. Our M103, he's pulled back. 121 listened and he pulled back. Awesome. But we're gonna lose this pretty easily. But you can defend fairly well here. Like, if our Strive 103 set up there, honestly, he could deflect most of the lower caliber guns here, and there's no arty to kill him. And outside of that, we have a Yag Tiger, but not too much other things with armor outside of like the Meal, the E75. But even though we're not winning this very key part, really that it affects us down here, but it really only affects us in this little bubble here, and just avoid it. Fortunately, even though I'm a little bit concerned, let's get the free camera here. pushing over here is a little bit of a challenge for me. I don't have the gun depression to actually point my gun over the front and stay safe. If I expose my side, I'm going to take damage. So more or less, I'm just trying to spot these guys right now. The hatches are weak enough for people to pen you reliably, but luckily they're not the easiest things to hit. They're not very large. So I'm just kind of poking over here, keeping these guys lit in the off chance they make a mistake and can, get hit by my other guys further back. But I can just barely peek up here enough to where basically they can't hit my lower plate. However, I can't spot anything past here, which, TDs oftentimes, set up right on the edge of the maximum render range. And that's a problem for me. Right now I've blocked 1,000 damage. We're down, I would consider us down a tank just because we lost a grill. And at this point, they have a big group here with only 2 tanks really defending. So got to make something work, which, fortunately for me, I get this hidden because I switched to a heat round. You don't always need to use them, but, there's times where you can't point your gun down enough. So just freaking use them. I blocked the T95 shot there, fortunately, but an Action X hits me, which scares me because he's set up over here. And also that FV4005 luckily shot an AP round at me. If he had shot a HESH round, this thing takes a lot of module damage, and I would be extremely concerned if he was shooting HESH, because this thing takes ammo rack damage like basically like no other tank, at least so far. I don't have safe stowage on it. I'm still working on Brothers in Arms, but I'm nearly there. But I punch another round through him, and at this point it's not worth me continuing to push up here because everyone's kind of focused on me now. But we still have a decent group here, but they're kind of safe. I'm better off going back to the base. I kind of point out that, which a lot of people turn chat off. Getting to this, the reason I leave chat on, yes, it's toxic sometimes, but I word it in the beginning somewhat nicely, like, why push the South when we're destined to lose down there? And it got the 121 to pull back. Granted, he might have pulled back regardless, but the teams seem somewhat receptive. And then as far as chat goes, I try to point out there's a T95 because we can't see him there, and basically what's shooting me that others might not see. And at this point, we got to go back to the base because we have nobody really defending back here. And I even say it's better if we turn around because I take a little bit of a gamble and pop out here. But fortunately, I'm able to hit this M103. The Leopard's not spotting me. He's dead now, but he couldn't spot me behind a rock. But the Centurion gets me because obviously someone saw me, though. I thought I scooted by there. But, I swap over to a heat round because I bounced on that M103. But the gun on this can play tricks on you sometimes. At this point, though, I end up doing over 4,000 damage. I'm only at 1,400. Had I continued to basically go with a losing tactic there and trying to bash my head, which the reason I didn't go south was to avoid these TDs pushing into them. The losing fight pushing into, enemies you either can't see or barely can see, and, they're pre-aimed and you're the one who has to finagle your way towards them. It's better to pull back here. Had we not, we might have died, or all died back here with my teammates and got capped out, flanked, stuff like that. But better to kind of cut your losses, and hopefully, those guys don't continue to push. But at this point, we're just down by 1 tank. I'm still concerned though, because they still have those big TDs, and really it's make it or break it depending on what we do at the base here. But there's 4 of us back here right now. Really, I'm the one with the least amount of HP at 1,500, but going up against an IS-7, STB-1, potentially a T-30, and a Skoda T-50, fairly confident that we could win. especially because we have you know, the meal with the autoloader, and I can tank a little bit of damage. But without Artie, again, we just lost another tank, the E75, trying to push out there, doing something. You're again smashing your head against a brick wall. It's not worth it. The enemy, you know, with those TDs, they're less likely to advance on this side, even when we pull back. You know, basically, there's less of a chance for them to flank and kill us if we all pull back, murder them here, and then move up. That's a bad word to use, murder. But fortunately here, they have to push up on me to get shots off on me, which with a heat round, I'm not too thrilled that I chose heat there, but luckily the IS-7 points, you know, his front at me. He would have been better leaving his side armor. Now, I take that stupid hit from the IS-7 because I was a little bit too far up. I'm worried about the Skoda, the T-30, but, you know, I've got to take out this STB-1 because, you know, he can take 2 shots from us. And at this point, you know, we can lose a lot of HP if we kind of draw this fight out. I get more bounces there, which that ends up being all that I end up bouncing. But, you know, with another heat round here, I'm luckily able to not bounce off the STB-1. I was very concerned about that because that has very good angles on its turret. But, you know, the high alpha on this for a heavy tank at tier 10, it's not like super high, but it's, you know, at 440, it's higher than, say, like the T110E5 and stuff. But I almost wish it had the 490 damage gun that the WZ has. Now, at this point, you know, our AMX-50B, he's getting pushed on, which, you know, I was hoping that wasn't going to happen. But luckily, you know, it's a different story. The TD's pushing there. It's going to take them longer than if, you know, it was like medium tanks pushing on them over there. And fortunately for us, you know, even though they're going to, you know, kill him, you know, it winds up working out in the end. Because, you know, we're going to clean up the base over here. At this point, we have a Centurion Action X and a T-30 potentially, and really that's all that can damage us. But we're still going to be faced with a T-95, Jagdpanzer E-100, FV 4005, and it's still a tough road ahead of us. I am one-shottable by virtually everything here. The only hope I have is a bounce, a low roll, Hesh round, you know, not doing a lot of damage. But I'm hoping, you know, a couple of these guys with more HP than me can push out and spot. Because, you know, this T-30 is somewhere down here, unless he ran away, which is very unlikely. Pushing over here, though, I spot him, but with the lack of gun depression, I wasn't able to aim down enough. But fortunately, you know, I can just barely sneak in here. He wasn't aiming at me for some reason. Or the Skoda had the Skoda pushed out again. He was aiming at the rock, so that was a pretty easy kill. But at this point, you know, the 2 TDs are up here. They're kind of out of position. You know, the JPZ, for whatever reason, pushes in really hard here, which was a huge mistake. I bounce off of him. I don't have any heat left. But the FV is now out on his own. The T-95, you know, he ends up not actually moving, which I know it's slow, and he would have been unlikely to get up to help this guy in time because they made the mistake of pushing up. Had they sat back, it would have been a lot tougher for us. But he could have at least tried to push up a little bit. But this poor soul, there's 4 of us, 1 of him, so worst comes to worst, he kills 1 of us. At best, he kills 2 of us, but I'm able to tap him there at the end. But the 113, like, I take some damage, but I block quite a bit. You know, staying at range definitely helps to where, you know, your upper glacis is strong, your turret front's strong, but your lower plate's extremely weak, your sides are weak, and, you know, you have a couple hatches on top people could pin you on. You know, I find it works very well, the armor at long range, but you really have to be aware of your lack of gun depression and your fickle gun with the accuracy. Aiming time's a little bit long, and the penetration doesn't always go in your favor. But, you know, it's a fairly well-balanced tank. It's basically like a big, fat, medium tank. More armor, a little bit less mobility and a little bit less reliable gun. But at this point, I'm just rushing in to spot this guy. We're getting decent damage off on him, and it's better for me to kind of be the sacrificial lamb, which I end up tracking him, which is what I was trying to do to get assist damage. Because quite a few of us can see him, so I'm not getting spotting damage. But it all works out in the end. But had I kept with my original plan, which kind of worked because we pushed the north pretty well, and I would have just gotten killed in the south and not done anything. Had I stuck with my plan, though, and continued to push into a losing fight of pre-aimed TDs, and they were spotting us without us being able to see them all the time, would have easily lost this match. Even with my allies going back to the base, it would have been a different story if I wasn't there to take some of those shots. So always keep your eye on the map, and if something's not working, it's a very low percentage chance of me like pushing into those TDs and surviving. Doesn't hurt to try something else if the enemy's not pushing up quickly. If they're just kind of poking out trying to spot you, leaves you a little bit of wiggle room to try something, and who knows, maybe it'll work like that. But like I said, it ends up being a Mastery Badge First Class, Steel Ball Award. The second screen here, I do the second most amount of damage on my team, most amount of experience, and on the enemy team, T30, their Skoda, Centurion do a good job, but especially the T30. But unfortunately, damage isn't everything. Like, I end up getting the huge chunk of my damage towards the end. Kind of pulling that audible, heading back to the base, and clearing that out. Doing a ton of damage doesn't always mean it's in the best spots on the map or best part of the match. Early on is better than later on, but fortunately later on for my damage was definitely very useful to my team. And then finally here, I shoot 22 times, I hit 18 of them, I pen 11. I think one damage worth was a blind shot that I took, and it damaged the tank. Because at the end of my battle, it shows 3,600 damage, and it ends up being 4,100. A little bit over 4,100 here. One of those shots was 489. Being over 300 meters, so that was my blind shot. I get hit 15 times. Only 4 of them pen, because fortunately I was playing at long range. I was keeping my, height equal more or less to their base, so they weren't shooting down at me, negating my upper plate's armor. So that worked out in my favor against, a couple TDs that shot me, like the T95, the FV405, leading to 5,400 blocking damage, and a little bit of assists sprinkled in there, nearly 1,000. And I did lose credits because I fired quite a bit of heat, basically all my heat rounds, and I fired all my HE rounds. I was only left with 12 AP at the end, but ammunition count does kind of shoo you into, you have to carry a good amount of AP because heat's very expensive, and you don't always need it. But having a little bit more ammunition would help, because sometimes HE can be pretty useful in this tank, because your accuracy isn't the best, and just when you're moving around, sometimes it's chuck a HE round at a mouse, do a little bit of module damage, but you have no chance to pen him, even with heat, at long range, and he's angled. Sometimes that can be a good play. But anyway, thanks for watching this replay. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you haven't watched my live stream, I live stream here several times a week on YouTube. Feel free to check it out. There's a past live stream at the end of this video. Feel free to click it and watch a bit of it. Otherwise, hopefully you enjoyed this, and hopefully I'll see you in another video. Have a good day. See ya.